Investment advisory services offered through Independent Solutions Wealth Management and Blackridge Asset Management, LLC. Peak Broker Services, LLC is not an affiliate of Independent Solutions or Financial Guys, LLC.
You're listening to The Financial Guys.
We're $23 trillion in debt, honey. We don't have an extra surplus of money.
Newsflash, guys, stop attacking businesses because when all the businesses are gone, nobody's going to pay your salary anymore. You get that?
If the goal is to create a loser mentality, you're winning.
I'm going to build a big, beautiful wall with a big, beautiful door. Well, guess what? We have a big, beautiful door, all right. It's the wide open southern border, right?
Yeah. Here's Glenn Wiggle and Mike Lomas.
All right, welcome back. Financial Guys Podcast. Mike Lomas, Glenn Wiggle, taking the week off today. He'll be back next week. We're going to probably do a quick podcast without Glenn. He's always got a lot to say and miss him, but he'll be back next week. A little bit under the weather. I think so many people have been under the weather this week. So I'm looking at Rochelle. Rochelle, you should have a mic here. But so many people have been sick all across the country, our Florida office, Buffalo office. So it is the season. I, by the way, got a flu shot for the first time in my life this year, ever. Well, I'm scared of needles, but it went all right. I mean, I just, pretend not to cry a little bit, and I moved on. But knock on wood, I did not get the flu, although I really haven't had the flu. I remember as a kid, I'd get the flu like every year, once a year. It was brutal, like 2-3 days, and knock on wood, I haven't gotten it. But I do take my vitamins, so maybe old men vitamins actually work. We'll see. I do want to talk a little bit of money today. I get articles all over the place, so we'll just, I'm going to bounce. I'm going to bounce today. This is the Financial Guys Podcast on for a year, right? Has that been a year? A year. That's crazy. So it's hard to believe how fast time goes by. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been a rough week. My Buffalo Bills lost on Saturday, and I cried for just a little bit, but I think they're building a good foundation, and I've been my daughter got me back into the Bills and Sabres. My 12-year-old daughter got me back into the Bills and Sabres. I was like, I don't need them anymore. They're so bad. I don't want them. And then she got involved, loved them, and I'm like, all right, let's go to a game or two. And now I'm suckered back into being a Bills and Sabres. Not that I was ever not a Bills and Sabres fan, but now we're back into it big time. So, but I'm excited. I think they got a good foundation. This is not a sports talk show, but I'm telling you, I think we win the Super Bowl in the next 5 years. Just saying. I hope so. We're America's team. If you look at the ratings, by the way, Buffalo Bills being actually good this year, I think we're a huge part of bringing the NFL's ratings up by like 5%. And it's so funny because the mainstream media apparently can't stand Buffalo because watching the Texans game, all they did was wish that the Texans were going to win. And then on Thanksgiving Day, they bragged about how the Cowboys' ratings were up. Well, the Cowboys play every single year on Thanksgiving. So what was the difference? What was the variable this year in the Cowboys game? Well, the Buffalo Bills played them. So anyways, an attack on an Iranian general this week, Qasem Soleimani, pronounce that right, took his, the U.S. took him out. And I keep hearing World War III, and I'm going to talk a little bit about stock markets today. We're going to talk about diversification, talk about making a New Year's resolution and putting together a plan. But I keep hearing, of course, the left saying, shame on us for doing this. This guy was a dirtbag. He was a scumbag. He needed to be taken out. Go back, by the way, and watch Joe Biden in 1996 when the Democrats were in control and him talking about we should do whatever it takes to make sure we get bad guys out of Iran. Well, President Trump, hats off to you. He did that. I think what it says, by the way, is President Trump's not going to put up with any bullshit. And I love that. Right, this scumbag was putting together a plan to take out, a shadow war with the U.S. I'd say, he's had a track record of arming terrorists. He's had a track record of killing Americans. Somebody said to me the other day, I'm worried about the stock market. So you're worried about stock market because of taking out a dirtbag in Iran. Last week we talked about some of the things that make economic activity great. We talked about less regulations or right-sizing regulations, lower taxes. And if you remember, one of the things Glenn and I talked about, and I put it up there as number one, is safety. If you don't have a safe place to do business, economic activity will cease to exist. It happens in our cities, right? Look across the country at our cities. Look at this inner city of Detroit. My hometown of Buffalo, New York, the east side of Buffalo. Very little to no economic activity that's, well, on the books, I should say, right? There's economic activity, but it's, quote, off the books. But, there's no restaurants in the east side of Buffalo. And that's not because the real estate market is too expensive there. It's because it's not safe. Anytime we can get a dirtbag out of the world, I think it makes us safer long term. And I think if we have a pullback in the stock market as we remove a dirtbag, I think it's a great buying opportunity. So I hear World War III, please. Iran does not have the resources. They do not have the manpower to fight the United States of America. We have the finest soldiers in the world. We have the greatest men and women, and we have the greatest technology. And certainly someplace like Iran is not going to change that. So to me, I think it's a huge buying opportunity when we see the markets pull back. And we saw that. We saw a day of the markets pull back. I think a big part of that was giving up the 300-point gain from the day before. But I think investors agreed with me. Wall Street said, look, is it going to cause some uncertainty in the short term? Yes. Is it a good buying opportunity? Well, let's see. We got a dirtbag out of the world that makes it safer. I think it's a good buying opportunity. What else do we go with? I heard this week Warren, by the way, Sanders should be the candidate that Donald Trump fears. This is out of the Hill. And I actually still think it's going to be Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden is the only candidate that the Democrats have that have a little bit of a shot of competing with Donald Trump, although very little. If a Warren or a Sanders ends up being the nominee, not that Trump's not going to walk into office anyways, with whether it's Joe Biden or whoever it is, but geographically, numbers-wise, this country still understands what socialism will do to it. It understands the negative impact that socialism has had on places like Venezuela and basically everywhere else it's been tried around the world. And I think although he's going to get this little bit of support, and I don't deny that party actually might vote a socialist in, but the country's not going to vote a socialist in. So I welcome the opportunity to see a Sanders or a Warren as the candidate, because I think you're ultimately going to see the biggest landslide in U.S. history when it comes to the general election. Where else do we go here? Chelsea Clinton made $9 million. $9 million. You see that? $9 million since 2011 from corporate board positions. Now, I wonder what types of skill sets she has. I mean, it's amazing to me when you look at the children of these folks, whether it's the Biden family or the Clinton family. What in the world could Chelsea Clinton offer at her age with very little to no corporate experience, right? $9 million. $9 million. Folks, this is exactly the kind of crap that Donald Trump is talking about, right? And for those of you that say, well, Donald's kids earn a good living, yes, they do. Yes, they do, and they earn it, right? In the private sector, right? Donald Trump worked in the private sector, not the public sector, the private sector. Him and his family and his dad, Trump's dad, built up, was one of the largest owners of residential real estate in New York City, and passed that on to Donald, and also passed on the education of how to make money in the real estate market. Donald took it to an entirely new level, right? And God bless him and good for him. And he passed that on to his children, and his children are making money in the real estate business. The Clintons, what exactly do they do? What business did they start besides abusing taxpayers and a, quote, nonprofit or a foundation that was supposed to be, quote, helping people, yet we've taken millions and millions of dollars out of it for salaries. We've taken millions of dollars out of it for Chelsea's wedding. And then, of course, we've got connections now with Chelsea making $9 million since 2011 from being on a corporate board. I would love to be in some of those board meetings. I would love to see what she brings to the table compared to some of the folks who actually have real-life business experience out there. This is a joke. This is exactly this is exactly why the Biden family, the Clinton family, the Democrats are scared of him, because he is not afraid to expose some of this garbage. So $9 million since 2011. That's an absolute joke. Where else do we go? Oh, a massive wind turbine crashes down into a car into the Bronx. See that, Rochelle? A massive wind turbine crashed down onto a car in the Bronx. I was not sure whether I was disappointed that the wind turbine fell apart. I mean, I don't think anybody got hurt, so that's a good thing, except for this car. I was. Spot on. That's exactly what I said. Exactly what I said. I said, I actually think I might be a little bit impressed. It was actually rolling. It was moving. Yeah, it was moving. I can tell you, I drive to the South Towns during the summer, South Towns here in Western New York quite a bit, out to a place called Chautauqua Lake, 18-mile lake, south of, about an hour car ride south of Buffalo. And I am out there about 5-6 times throughout the summer, and very rarely do I see any of the wind turbines actually moving. There's a few of them right on the exit on Silver Creek there, and 9 out of 10 times they're not moving. So I was impressed that this one actually moved. Unfortunately, the result of it actually working for a little bit spun it off and knocked out a car and took and we're lucky somebody didn't get killed. But that's the result of these massive wind turbines. Apparently, they're there for eye candy, not actually to produce power. And we know that they've been miserable failures, but now they're actually falling apart and hurting people. So, which costs money to not only clean it up, but I wonder what's this going to do to the environment when they find out it's killing the roads and the bridges and everything else that the Democrat Party stands for. All right, let's take a quick break. We come back. I want to talk a little bit of money. I want to talk about setting up a New Year's resolution for 2020 and putting together a solid financial plan. We are the Financial Guys. This is the place where money meets politics. If you need us throughout the week, go to our website, by the way. All of our social media stuff, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff you can find on our website, thefinancialguys.com. And we have a lot of fun with the show, have a lot of fun with our radio shows. The place where money meets politics. We do manage money for a living, so if you need our help, I'll talk more on the other side of the break about some 2020 New Year's resolutions and how to embrace technology and how to put together a solid plan going into the new decade. Mike Lomas, Glenn Wiggle, Financial Guys. We'll be back. All right, welcome back. Mike Lomas, Glenn Wiggle. We are the Financial Guys, the place where money meets politics. We have a ton of fun with our radio shows, podcast. 1 year into our podcast, and this is pretty cool. It gives us a bunch of freedom. When you do radio for 20 years, you are sometimes you need to be right on the dial, right? We're out at 159.9. And I don't need to do that with a podcast. So that's a lot of fun and gives us a lot of flexibility. And I appreciate all of you tuning in. We've been building up a real nice base over the last year. The place where money meets politics. A lot of times folks ask us, why do you talk so much about politics? It drives, look at stocks trade on earnings. Companies make more money if the economic environment is right. That comes back to politics. I've been saying it forever. If you look at the last 2 years, the stock market's been volatile for two reasons, right? Number one, the Fed, and number two, trade. Those are political things, right? So we really need to take a step back and say, okay, what is happening politically and how is that going to drive our portfolios? The other thing we have to do is take a step back and understand that the stock market is a leading indicator. It looks out into the future. I remember Barack Hussein Obama being voted in, and a lot of folks saying, I'm going to get out of the stock market. And I say, you got to be really careful about that because, that might set us up for something really cool into the future, right? That might set us up for a change agent that finally sparks the Republican Party to get off their ass and actually vote in somebody with a backbone. And that's exactly what happened, right? We had Barack Hussein Obama who shifted the country as far as he could to the left, right? Regulation after regulation, higher taxes, and an attitude that you didn't build this. Out of that, we got just the opposite. We've got a president, which I would say has got the biggest backbone I've ever seen in my life, right? The biggest set of stones I've ever seen in my life. And he's proactively lowering corporate taxes, right-sizing regulations. And I really believe that, right-sizing regulations. He's been focused on, he's a business guy, he's been focused on business regulations. I forget the gentleman the other day. He's from Shark Tank. The guy is a Kevin O'Neill, the guy with the bald head. And Kevin was talking about the fact that, some of his businesses have really benefited from some of the deregulations and some of the federal deregulations that you would never think of. Like if you opened up an ice cream stand, the ice cream box where we store the ice cream can't be within 8 feet of a window, and just stupid things like that. And he talked about some of the just, I would call them dumb regulations that the Trump administration has been scrapping, which has allowed some of his companies, and he owns lots of different franchises and different organizations, allowing them the ability to now expand. It's worth it now when I don't have to spend an extra $17,000 to put a sprinkler system inside a freezer, right? So, and we know that. We know that unemployment rates are at record lows right now, 3-point-something% unemployment rate. That's incredible, right? Economic growth. I would say economic growth is not at 5 and 6%, which I think we have the potential to do for one reason and one reason only, and that's because we still haven't fought the war on poverty. And now Trump has started that, right? He has started that. About a month or two ago, he passed some legislation that's going to defund about 700,000 people, able-bodied people, men between the ages of 18 and 49 that are not sick. They're able-bodied. They can go out and work, but it starts to take away some of the permanent welfare for those folks to push them out into the labor force. There's no excuse for an able-bodied person to not have a job right now. The biggest problem in this country is not having enough people to work, and we have them here though. So I don't want to hear, well, it's okay to let them sneak over the border. No, we've got rules in this country. We've got 30 million people still on food stamps. Put them to work. This is a great opportunity to do that. I do think, though, Trump has been trying to do that. I want to talk a little bit about some New Year's resolutions going into 2020 here. We always talk about, of course, getting in shape in the beginning of the year, or reducing smoking, or I'm not going to vape this year, or I'm going to cut down on whatever it is, grease or alcohol or whatever. But I want you to consider a financial resolution, right? 2020, now is the time, and I've been saying this forever, to embrace technology. I want you to embrace technology in the form of using financial planning software to develop a roadmap for yourself so you can start to be a visionary with your money. So you can start to say, where am I going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And you can visually see it. A lot of business mentors will tell you you should write down your goals and objectives. Well, when it comes to financial planning, I think you should use financial planning software to understand where you are. To me, that's writing it down. To me, that's visionary. To me, that's seeing, here's where I am today. Here's what I'm going to need to do over the next 5, 10, 15, and 20 years to get to where I need to be. Part of that planning, by the way, is understanding your budget, understanding how much money you need or want to live on a monthly basis. There was a commercial years ago, Glenn and I always talk about it. I think it was ING that said, they would say, what's your number? And your number is going to be a number that you can retire on. Do you need to save $500,000? Do you need to save $1 million? I would tell you that your number needs to be enough. And what I mean by that is we have clients that have $10 million invested with us that can't retire. Why? Because it's not enough. They've got multiple cars, multiple homes, a small airplane. It's not enough. We also have clients that have $300,000 with us and they've been retired for 20 years. Why? Because they have a pension and Social Security and they live within their means and it's enough. You need to find that number out. But to do that, you need to do some planning. When we look back at the last year, I continue to hear the stock market is at an all-time high. It can't go higher. We need to get out now. And I'll laugh and say, well, the stock market was at an all-time high when it bounced back from 3,000, or when we went through the real estate crisis in the late 80s, early 90s, the Dow Jones went from 3,000 to 1,700 and then raced to 12,000. And people said at 4 and 5,000 on the Dow and 6,000 on the Dow and 9,000 on the Dow, it's got to stop. It cannot continue to move forward, and it did, right? So I think it can. If you look at the last year, by the way, we had about a 5,500 point move in the Dow. And most people would say, wow, that's impressive. But I want you to look back a little bit further. In fact, instead of looking back just over the last year, let's look back 13 and 14 months ago, right? Add 2 months on to that, and you'll notice that the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped at the end of 2018. So when you really start to look at 2019, you say, wait a minute, out of the 5,500 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 4,000 of those points were a recovery from the beating we took at the end of 2018. I'm not discrediting a good 2019. It was a good 2019. It was a great 2019. It was great to see the stock market rebound from the pullback in late 2018. But I will say it can go higher. It can go higher. We've got a lot of good companies out there. I do think it's becoming more of a stock pickers market where you're starting to see some companies that have really, really great valuations, cash on the books, paying a good dividend. And you're also seeing some companies that are starting to become what I would call a little frothy, a little expensive. So I do think you need to cherry pick some of the winners. I think, it's a great time to look at some of the money managers inside your portfolio and really sort of double check. Are they doing what they tell you you're going to be doing? Are they combing through and trying to do their best to find you the best opportunities out there? Embracing technology, do a portfolio X-ray. Exactly where is your money invested? How much is in stocks? How much is in bonds? Why is a certain percentage in stocks? If it's 50-50, why is that? Is that going to get you to your goal, right? We're going back to the beginning of our conversation. We came out of the break. Is your goal 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15, 20 years from now to be at $500,000, $1 million, whatever that number is your asset allocation, your diversification in line with that? Is it going to get you, do you think? Is it going to give you the probabilities to get you to where you need to be? So understand your overall picture and embrace the entire picture. And when at the Financial Guys, I'll tell you, we've done what I call departmentalize. We have a number of different experts in this office, whether it's Social Security planning, estate planning, the Medicare planning. A lot of times folks will say, why do you have a Medicare department? We have a Medicare department because I've seen people make the wrong moves with Medicare, and it's cost them thousands and thousands of dollars by not signing up for Medicare the right way. That comes out of their portfolio. That hurts their retirement plan. My job as a fiduciary is to make sure that we're putting them and giving them the greatest probabilities of being successful. The same is true with Social Security. We have a certified Social Security claiming department, certified experts. Why is that important? By making the right move with Social Security, that may allow less money to come out of your portfolio. We call it excess capital. What is your excess capital? So all this stuff needs to come together. It doesn't do you any good if you have the right financial mix of investments, but you pick the wrong Social Security option. It really does you very little good if Medicare is selected wrong and you come up against a health issue and you're not covered and you could have been covered, right? So these are the types of things that for 2020, I want you to embrace and take advantage of the technology. Go to our website, by the way, thefinancialguys.com. What am I supposed to say? Subscribe. Is that it? Subscribe to us. Like us on our YouTube channel. And share us. Share us, Rochelle says. Share us. Share us with your friends. It's 2020. God bless. We'll be back next week, both of us, Glenn Wiggle, Mike Lomas, the place where money meets politics. We have a lot of fun with the podcast, a lot of fun with the radio shows, whether it's Buffalo, Rochester, now out to most of South Florida. So tune in on Saturday, and we'll be back here on the Financial Guys podcast. We'll see you next week. Take care. God bless.